first is a mentality that I think every team should have. But obviously, forward first isn't always an option. So you need to have confidence to play sideways and backwards. Questions, comments? What else do we have? Terminology. So with a lot of this stuff, it's this is new territory for us. We haven't really had to have these conversations and come up with a lot of these things. Since CSC, as we know, is getting bigger and better. And we have more coaching staff than we ever have before, more teams than ever before. So part of the process of growing is kind of being more organized and coming up with these things. So you guys as a staff have 100% influence on this. It's not just mine and Russell's ideas and Connor's ideas. It's a constant process of including you guys as well. So when we go out and have conversations, don't feel like you can't say, hey, this is how I think soccer should be played. And we can get into some really fun and cool conversations about that stuff. And hopefully it makes our teams and our club a better soccer club. So when we talk about terminology, if you could find that tab for us, computer guy.
Should be to the left on the
it's kind of a working document. A lot of these I wouldn't say are necessarily terms, but they're things that you as a coach can say on the sideline or in training sessions. When Connor and I were looking at this, we really wanted to try to come up with more specifics. I think one big terminology that we as a club want every coach to utilize is the numbering system. Every single one of our teams should be using the numbering system for multiple reasons. One, again, as a club, it makes us more organized. If I want to send players to Connor's team, they easily know what systems they're playing because they have a number system. It makes transition between age groups easier. So if I'm using at 7v7, my two center backs are a 4 and a 5. When they go play 9v9, they should be playing with a 4 and a 5, or maybe a 6 in the middle if you're playing with 3. And then when they go play 11v11, that 4 and 5 is still there. It doesn't change from left center back to right center back or whatever, full back, whatever you can come up with. So there's more consistency when you're transitioning from age groups if you use the numbering system. And the last thing for me, I think it's kind of something that's kind of very specific to CSC, and I don't actually think a lot of people are using it. I coached at the FC Academy discovery sessions last night, and they use the numbering system, but when I kept saying, hey, you're playing number 2 or you're playing number 3, the kids were like, what is that? Or is number 9 right back? I said, no, number 9 is not a right back, you're playing striker. So I think it's a unique thing to our club, and I think it's something that makes us stand out a little bit to other clubs.
Just real quick, is this on our website by any chance? The definitions, I thought I defined it for my guys, and we just had a short little evaluation in the last few days. And the first question was, how can I learn more about what number 9 means? Do we have a...
We have a document. I can send it.
Yeah, we have a shared document before. If it's not on there, it will be on there. Right. Yeah.
We don't have this is all part of the curriculum document, what we're looking at here. I don't have a link to this on the website because I kind of see it as proprietary. It's also, sometimes it's a little bit draft mode. So, it's shared with our coaches, but as far as what is a number 9, we have a couple of things out there about that, and there's like U.S. Soccer has some things about the numbering system and what the roles and responsibilities are.
Yeah, but I think it's a good one for parent communication too.
It is. Yeah, and that's like the parent expectations things where it's like you have to share it every season basically. We repeat the same stuff. But.
So yeah, terminology. It's a work in process. If you guys have any terms that you think that we should add to this list, or if you want to have a conversation about that, again, feel free to send those suggestions to us or have those conversations. Anything else from terminology coming for you?
No, I mean, there's if you scroll down, there's multiple phases of the game of what we should be saying in different phases, what we can and maybe stuff to avoid, right? Clear it, boot it, that's not something we want to be telling our players.
Wheels!
What's more appropriate, can we find our target, right? Something to think about as well is open-ended questions, not yes and no questions. Make your players think, genuinely make them think. Not just as simple as can you get the who's in the space? Who should we be playing at this moment, right? Like, so I don't know, things of that nature. Related to the numbering system is like, that's just such a vital piece, like Chris was saying, just within the club, but also bigger than that. Like, if we want to be developing players for college and sending them on to their college teams, if we want to be developing players for their high school programs, like, they can go straight in and have an understanding of what they're being asked to do immediately, just by hearing a number. Like,
There is a graphic on the website for the position. If you're looking for it.
Sam, and then the last tab, will you go to the curriculum just so we can look at it? Go to your left. Should be like the first.
324.
there you go.
All right, so this is our club curriculum document, if you haven't seen it before. Hopefully everyone has. And again, we just wanted to touch again on this. These topics, everyone should be trying to utilize in the 2-week process. The training sessions that are on there, you don't have to do them. If you don't like them, if this isn't how you would do passing and receiving or passing out of the back, you are more than welcome to do your own activity. And actually, we encourage it, and we would love it if you would share it with us, because if we can give it out to other people, we 100% will. And I really appreciate these topics because to me, they say player development versus team development. It's not certain topics. Like, all of these topics can be related back to your certain players. And I would just really focus on when you're designing your sessions around these, is think about your certain players. When you're playing out from the back, think about who's playing as your number 6 and ways that you can improve that individual player. And it's going to be more than if you go into your training session and just say, hey, okay, I'm gonna set my 2 teams up into teams and we're just gonna play out from the back. Like, really be specific with what players you wanna put in certain situations. One big thing that I've learned from the C course is to track a little bit of data, and I found it difficult for me because I have 3 teams, but if I can track one thing in a training session for one player that's struggling, let's say Miles, for an example, if he struggles with turning, can I put him in a situation where he has to turn on the ball, and can I track how many times he does it successfully? And then can I just go give that information to him? Hey man, you try to turn 5 times with the ball, you've only done it twice, and then we can have those conversations. And that right there is instantly making one player on your team better. So just when you read these sessions, think more about player development than you do, okay, this is what I got to give my team. And I think you'll come up with some pretty creative ways of designing training sessions. Coach Connor, myself, and Jared, we use Tactical Pad, but there's a ton of other programs. You use a certain program, don't you, Juan?
Yeah. I forgot the name of it. It's called. I just downloaded it on my computer.
There's another one that's soccer specific. It's basically just a website that you can go on. I think there's a small subscription fee, but you can edit and design all your own sessions, and you can type up descriptions and everything about them. So feel free to come up with that stuff. And a prepared coach is better than someone that procrastinates and waits the last minute. And I'm definitely the person that has designed training sessions last minute. And the ones that I take the time to plan out 2 weeks beforehand or whatever are always better than the ones that I do last minute. So don't just rely on what's in your head. Really plan out some of your training sessions and continue to develop them.
Coach, what was one of the resources you said?
So we use Tactical Pad. That has a lot of like cool animation and stuff. That one does have a subscription fee. And then soccerspecific.com is one that I found, and I think it's maybe $10 a month. But I know there's some free ones out there. You just have to read them.
There's in the Learning Center on US Soccer as well as just like a free to create graphics kind of thing. Like,
The one in this technical board.
Tactical.
Yeah.
All these blue videos are links to YouTube. There's videos with created with voiceovers. So every week there's stuff for you. And some of the reasons why we did this is we want to be able to provide an idea of the topic before the session to the parent and the player, potentially in the car on the way to the session. So if you know that you're running this activity today, you can send it to the player and be like, hey, this is what we're doing today. Can you review it? You might get 2 kids to watch it if you're lucky. But you did it, number one. And the second one is those 2 kids now are like coaches for you. They know what's happening next. your attention plan might change, but I think preparation prevents poor performance. The way you can prepare and help your players prepare for what they're going into is helpful.
I just have a couple things related to this. When I first started, I was very caught up in the idea of like, I have to do these activities that are presented to me. That's like Chris was saying, that's not the case. This is just a guideline. Like, if you have something else, please go for it. Like, try to be within the curriculum, the 2-week segments, right? But go for it in terms of the activities. And then the other thing was just like related to how much time you're spending planning the sessions. Like, be prepared to fail too. Like, you're gonna have something that you think is amazing, and you're gonna show up and it's just like, sometimes you gotta take 2 minutes, all right, get a drink, scrap that, sorry, set it, like, just go again, you know? Happens more than I'd like to admit.
But yeah, that's pretty much all that we have, I think. So if there's any other questions, we're here to help. Coach Connor, myself, Jared, we're people that you guys can come to and ask questions or bounce ideas off of. Look forward to it.
Cool. Thanks. Good job. Next on stage, introducing Sam, the Mr. Anderson Miller.
All right. So I know Chris and Connor talked a little bit about some of the principles before. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts when you hear or see those attacking principles. Bob, are you able to just take the cursor off? It should have, so it shows the whole screen. I'm not sure why it ends there. Maybe just click on it real quick. I'm not sure why it has it. There you go. So when you look at those attacking principles, kind of get your thoughts. What do you think of? So penetration. So when you're seeing that word, what do you think of in a match?
Breaking lines.
Breaking lines with a pass. All right. What other ways can we penetrate?
By dribbling.
A dribble. Okay. And a strike too, potentially, right? From maybe a distance, right? To be able to threaten. Support. What does that make you think of?
Angles to me.
Angles to be able to
Receive.
keep possession. We can't go forward maybe, and so we have to be able to go backwards, maybe. And then I saw an interesting term that I liked, dispersal, right? So when we're talking with what picture does that paint in your mind, or what players are providing with? Wingers, fullbacks, okay, wingbacks, depending on your system. Okay, ultimately, at some point, you're going to have to use, right, certain numbers in your team to be able to do that. Okay, and then mobility. What does mobility make you think of when we're talking attacking principles? So your movement off the ball in what spaces? Forward space, yeah. So if we talked about support, we're talking behind a lot of times. We're talking mobility, we want to get beyond, all right? And so when we think of mobility and we look and set up our teams, do we have players and either that are capable or are thinking to get beyond the defense? What I see a lot of times, even like from as a player when I was playing to now coaching, like center forwards have changed. So when it drove me nuts when I played with a player that was a 9, and he never wanted to get into the 6-yard box when a cross was coming in. He always wanted a cutback at the penalty spot. And I'm like, well, you're the closest player to goal, and you're never getting a position to be like the first run to make the goalkeeper respect when a cross comes in, that you could finish in that area. So I'm like, so now we have to have the 10 run beyond you every single time. So things like that mobility, when we set our teams up, whether you play with 2 forwards, 3 forwards, all right, 1 forward, who are your players that are going to be able to get beyond or behind the defense, okay? A lot of us want creative players, right? But creativity in an attacking sense, okay, what players come to mind that you'd think, you know, that would be sort of in their wheelhouse, or
10.
10s,
7s, 11s.
7s, 11s, take people on. Nowadays, okay, if we're trying to play forward, all right, what do your 6s or 8s have to have creative-wise? So vision or types of turns that can get out of pressure. I think that's an underrated thing that we don't maybe talk about enough, is how creative your turn can be. Everybody thinks creativity is on the ball beating somebody, right, or the type of pass, but I love watching midfield players and their ideas of when the ball comes into them, how they're gonna be able to escape. And so the last piece, and I'll have a couple clips of stuff that we do, or that we had from my high school team, since Russell asked me to kind of use some of that to help. But transition, so he talked about attacking transition. What are the things that ultimately, yeah, you want to go from defense and play forward when you win it, right? But what are some of the like sort of themes of attacking transition that when we hear that?
Explode.
Okay, at pace, okay, playing forward, urgent, an effort to join in, right? That's some things that I think a lot of times people don't add to their sessions maybe, is that it's not just these 2 or 3 players that are in higher spaces. Ultimately, we need everybody to be able to get out. We need everybody to join in, right? And so when I looked at those attacking principles, and I'm trying to put together sessions where I want guys to score goals and I want people to think forward, oftentimes for me, I try to start with a technical aspect of what I want the players to do in that session, like most of us, but how is it gonna lead to the exercise in 2 or 3, stage 2 or 3, to get to the game that I might put something on. So what I did was, I basically put in 3 different types of things that we do at the high school level, and I do it with the club guys too. They're not overcomplicating things to the point that they can't repetitively do it each time, and when they get into the next exercise, it doesn't make sense, okay? So a simple box drill where we have 3 different variations. Same thing for the second one I did as far as turns. The last one, if I have more space and I want to put things together, then I'm going to work patterns that involve all those different types of technique. So it might be back 4, how can they receive it across their body to play out the other side. If I'm working midfield shape, I'm going to work on turns, either back to goal, maybe a second movement, so they got to be able to get out of pressure, right? And then the last patterns, I try to add in maybe some creativity to allow them to create a pattern. I try to have creativity that is individual within the team setting. So the pattern might be a switch and play to a 7-11 to take I do it unopposed. I think unopposed, ultimately you can still, if you're pushing the tempo and with your voice and you're demanding, the players don't mind it because they're getting repetitions where they end up scoring or creating chances to build some confidence. Now, certainly I've done 11 versus 9, or depending on how many players you have, or 9 versus 7, something in the space that we're attacking. But ultimately, I want to try to incorporate all these things that I do in the first 15, 20 minutes of the session into the next exercise, just like anybody would. And so I have 2 exercises that I like, and oftentimes I might move it on this space of the field. So I have a whole field, I've set up our training session, so I have a whole field to work with. So each time that we show up, I go, well, if we're struggling in the back half of the field, I might just set up the exercise in a deeper space and then adjust some of the players or how many players are in the box that I have. So what I've done, that first activity, it's actually an activity that when I was in England watching my sister on an ODP trip back in 2008, Spurs coach came and did a session for her age group. And he basically, it was being able to try to break down in that final third, break the other team down in a variety of ways. So all I did is, and you can squeeze the box, you can extend it. I just made it the width of the penalty area because I don't want it to be about wing play. I don't want it to be about combinations out wide. I'm looking at how can we have ideas to be able to break the other team down in a central space. So I put a lot of numbers in there. And then I put plus players on their team, all right, on the back half. So there's support behind, all right, but they have to be able to connect 3 passes. Why 3 passes? Ultimately, I want to get our players out of the habit of 1 pass and try to beat somebody. Because ultimately you run up against some team that doesn't work. Or they're athletic enough and they go, well, my 7s and 11s usually blow by this player every single time we play. But then you play somebody good and they have somebody that can match you. So we need an extra idea. So I find 2 3 passes, if I put that on the players, it makes them work the extra bit, and it's similar to the patterns I do before in the exercises. So if I'm working on turns and I'm looking at my 9, so if I say the X is, whoop, flipped off there. So say I have my players here in this space, okay, and I've set the team up to be similar, all right, to what the match is, okay, so we have a front 3, we have a 10, we might have 2 6s. I'm gonna be concentrating on maybe the technical aspects. Oh, when this ball comes in here, are you able to get side on and then find the 3rd man that's working in behind, okay? Do I have to play the way I face here to then create a second movement to go beyond that line? And it's a great activity for if you don't have as much space, because the top of the 18 works as an offside line. So now you're saying, hey, I can't be in that zone before a pass is made. And so now I have to work across defenders. I have to open myself up. Some of the same things we would have done in a pattern that we did, all right, at the beginning of the session, okay? And like I said, I'm not trying to make it so complicated. I'm saying here are 1 or 2 movements that I feel are really important, and you have to be good at those. Here are a couple of terms, because I think, I'll flip it back on, guys. I'm all right until I'll put the videos on. But ultimately, I want those things that I just trained in the warm-up to come out in this tight space exercise. And it might be a 3rd man, all right? It might be, hey, can I get my 9, as I said, holding the ball up better to play back, all right? So we don't give the ball away as much. And then maybe we get the 10 running deal, okay? But just setting it up in the space that I want creates the attacking principles that I'm working on, all right? So I want creativity, I want support behind, and then I also want mobility to get beyond. So there's 3 attacking principles in one exercise that you go, okay, all right, we're getting something out of it. The other, on the flip side, if I make that same bit and I have half a field, or say I have a 3rd and I go up to here, all right, I can put those spaces in wide areas and say, all right, now the only way that you can score at the beginning of the exercise, the ball has to go into a wide space. And I would have done patterns that create an overlap. I would have done patterns where, if I'm looking at it from the other side, so we have, I try to put it so that we have a fullback and we have a winger, if that's our shape in there. And so now, all right, do the patterns happen where, oh, if this player, and I give them the license to get there, but we have to have one player at least in that channel every time. So there might be stipulations that I put on the game that force them to play wide early. You don't have to score from a wide position, but now, all right, oh, if he's come inside, and now we've done a pattern that works the 9 in that space, okay? I'm very detailed in my patterns, and I take them very seriously because ultimately I feel like, especially with younger ages or 14 through 16, when you get into bigger sided, when they go 11 aside and you're working on